All right, welcome everyone. Today, we're going to tackle three words that honestly hold up our entire economy: trust, ethics, and finance. We're going to get into why this connection is so vital for building a sustainable future and, what happens when it all falls apart. Let's get right into it. Just take a second and really think about this for yourself. What does it for you? Is it a faulty product, a CEO caught in a lie, or maybe some huge headline-grabbing scandal? This question, this is the core of everything we're about to talk about. Because in the world of finance, trust isn't just some nice-to-have feeling. It's everything. It's the currency the whole system runs on. Okay, so if we want to understand trust, we have to start with the system that's supposed to create and protect it in the first place. And that brings us to corporate governance. So what is corporate governance, really? Well, you can think of it as the how. How does a company make big decisions? How is it actually managed? And maybe the most important question, how is it held accountable to everyone it affects? We're not just talking about its owners, but its employees, its customers, and the wider community. And you can see right here how all these pieces fit together. It's kind of like a domino effect. You need transparency, letting people see what you're doing so you can have real accountability. But that accountability doesn't mean much without effective oversight to enforce it. And all of that rests on having clear ethical lines that you just don't cross. When that chain reaction works, you get trust. So what happens when that chain breaks? The damage isn't just a stock price dropping. It's a deep, systemic betrayal of trust that can take years, sometimes decades, to even begin to fix. And so often, the breakdown starts with the very people who are supposed to be protecting the system. We call these folks the gatekeepers: accountants, auditors, lawyers, board members. Society depends on them to keep things on the level. They have what's called a fiduciary duty, a deep legal and ethical obligation to act in the best interest of others. But right away you can see the tension, right? Who do you serve? The company writing you a massive check, or the public you're supposed to be protecting? And there's no better case study for this conflict than the Enron scandal. Their auditor, Arthur Andersen, was meant to be the independent watchdog. But just look at these numbers. They were getting paid more money to be a consultant for Enron than they were to be their auditor. So I ask you, how independent can you possibly be when you've got a $27 million incentive to keep the client happy? It's the definition of a conflict of interest. And we all know how that story ended. At the very heart of scandals like Enron, you'll find this concept: information asymmetry. It sounds complex, but it's a really simple and deeply unfair idea. It just means one person knows something important that the other person doesn't, and they use that secret to get ahead. It completely rigs the game. And the most notorious example of this in action is, of course, insider trading. Yeah, it's illegal, but the reason it's illegal is because it's so fundamentally unethical. It shatters the principle that the market should be a level playing field. When insiders can use secret information to get rich, it sends a clear message to everyone else: this game is fixed. And that just destroys public trust. So after Enron and a wave of other scandals, people were furious. Trust in the system was completely shattered. Regulators knew they had to do something drastic to try and piece it all back together. And that response was the Sarbanes-Oxley Act, better known as SOX. It was designed to hit these gatekeeper failures head on. Take Section 201. It directly addresses that Arthur Andersen conflict by basically banning auditors from doing most consulting gigs for their audit clients. Or Section 301, which demands that the audit committees on boards be truly independent. SOX was, in a sense, an attempt to use the law to seal up the cracks. At the same time, companies started using frameworks like this one, COSO, to build better defenses from the inside. It's a really logical blueprint. It starts with the tone at the top, the ethical culture that leadership creates, and flows all the way down to constantly monitoring how things are going. It's about designing an organization to catch problems before they blow up. All these new rules and frameworks, they seem like a good thing. But it begs a much bigger question, doesn't it? Can you actually legislate ethics? Can you use laws to force a company to be trustworthy? Or do you need something deeper? And the consensus that's really emerged is no, rules aren't enough. What was really needed was a huge shift in thinking, a move away from the idea that profit is the only thing that matters, toward a bigger view of what a company is even for. You might be surprised to see who said this. This isn't some modern activist. It's Henry Ford, more than 100 years ago. Even back then, he understood that, sure, profit is essential for survival, but a business that only cares about profit will eventually lose the trust of its customers, its community, and its employees. It loses its reason for being. This right here captures the two big competing ideas. For so long, the idea of shareholder primacy was king. The only job of a company is to make as much money as possible for its owners as fast as possible. The other view, stakeholder capitalism, says, hang on. A truly great business creates lasting value for everyone it touches. Its employees, its customers, society, and the planet. It's a completely different way to define success. So what on earth does all this have to do with sustainability? Well, everything. That stakeholder mindset is the absolute bedrock of a truly sustainable financial system. If you don't have that, then sustainability is just a marketing slogan. And look, there's a huge trust problem here. Research from the CFA Institute shows that even with all this talk about ESG and sustainability, half the people out there are skeptical. They just don't believe that companies and governments are actually going to do what they say they'll do on climate. This trust deficit is probably the single biggest roadblock we face. And that leads us to the critical difference between real, authentic ESG and its evil twin, greenwashing. Is a company's commitment to sustainability actually baked into its strategy, with real data and controls to back it up? Or is it just a shiny PR campaign? You can't be unethical in how you chase a sustainable goal. That is the very definition of greenwashing. Okay, so let's pull all this together and talk about you. Because this isn't just abstract theory. Understanding these connections is absolutely essential for your careers and for how you navigate the world. I love this quote because it perfectly nails the modern approach we need. Trust, but verify. We need to trust that companies have the right ethical culture and stakeholder values, but we also have to verify it with strong governance, transparent data, and solid internal controls. You need both. You need the culture and the controls. So as you think about your assignment, this is what it's all about. It's not just about listing definitions. It's about connecting the dots. Show how a true stakeholder focus is the only real defense against greenwashing. Explain how a failure of that fiduciary duty is what creates the information asymmetry that ultimately shatters trust. See how it's all one big interconnected story? And so we'll end with this thought for you. As you move into your careers, you are going to be part of this system. You will be the next generation of leaders, of employees, of investors. You'll be the gatekeepers. And the decisions you make every single day are either going to help build the trust our world so desperately needs, or they're going to help break it. That responsibility is on all of us.